shallow hole. Elaine usually smoothed things over when it came to this, as it did more often than it should. By the time Egwene thought of smoothing matters herself, she'd almost always dug in her heels and flared back, and trying to be soothing then would only be backing down. That was how Nynaeve would see it, she was sure. She could not remember Nynaeve ever making any move to back down, so how
Hell
should
yeah.
she?
I just got to
Besides,
roll a
Elaine was
couple
the
up.
heir. Moraine had summoned the daughter heir with a word and a gesture to follow the maiden who had come for the Aes Sedai. Without her, the tension stretched, each of the accepted waiting for the other to play first. Avienda barely breathed. She kept herself strictly out of their confrontations. No doubt she considered it simple wisdom to stand clear. Strangely, it was Amika who broke the impasse this time, though likely all she meant to do was demonstrate cooperation. She turned to face the far wall, waiting patiently to be done. The foolishness of it struck Egwene suddenly. She was the only woman in the room who could tell, unless Nynaeve grew angry or Joya's shield failed. She tested the weave of spirit again without thinking, and she indulged in the staring match, while Aniko waited to accept her bonds. At another time she might have laughed at herself aloud. Instead, she opened herself to Sidon, that never-seen, ever-felt glowing warmth that seemed always to be just beyond the cone of fire. The one power filled her, like joyous life itself redoubled, and she whirled the heroes around Aniko. Nynaeve merely grunted. It was doubtful she was mad enough to sense what Egwene was doing. She could not, without her temper. Yet she could see Aniko stiffen as the blows of air touched her, then slump, half supported by the flames, as if to show how little she was resisting. Avienda shuddered, the way she had taken to doing whenever she knew the power was being channeled through her. Egwene rolled rocks for Nico's ears, questioning them one at a time did little good if they could hear each other's stories, and turned to Joya. She shifted her fan from hand to hand so she could wipe that on her breast, and stopped with a breeze of distaste. Her sweaty palms had nothing to do with the temperature. Her face, Avienda said abruptly, and surprisingly, she almost never spoke unless addressed by Moray or one of the others. Anika's face. She does not have the look she did, as if the years had passed her by, not as much as she did. Is that because she was still? She'd finished in a breathless motion. She had picked up a few habits, being so much around them. No woman of the tower could speak of skill without a chin. Egwene moved down the table to where she could see Anika's face from the side and yet stay out of Joy's vision. Joya's eyes always turned her stomach to a lump of ice. Avienda was right. That was the difference she herself had noticed and not understood. Nico looked young, perhaps younger than her peers, but it was not quite the agelessness of Aes Sedai who had worked years with the One Tower. You have sharp eyes, Avienda, but I don't know if this has anything to do with skilling. It must, though, I suppose. Think of what else we cause it.
Hell yeah, fire. That's
She
badass.
realized that did not sound very much like an Aes Sedai, who generally spoke as if they knew everything. When an Aes Sedai said she did not know, she usually managed to make her denial appear to flow volumes of knowledge. While she was racking her brain for something properly portentous, Nynaeve came to her rescue. Relatively few Aes Sedai had ever been burned out, Avienda, and far fewer still. Burned out was what it was called when it happened by accident. Officially, stilling resulted from a trial and a sentence. Egwene could not see the point of it, really. It was like having two words or falling down the stairs, depending on whether you tripped or were pushed. For that, most Aes Sedai seemed to see it the same, except when teaching novices or accepted. Three words, actually. Men were gentle, must be gentle before they went bad. Only now there was Van, and the tower did not dare gentlify him. Nynaeve had put on a lecturing tone, no doubt trying to sound Aes Sedai. She was doing an imitation of Shiriam before class, Egwene realized, hands clasped at her waist, smiling slightly, as if it were all so simple when you applied yourself. Stilling is not a thing anyone would choose to study, you understand, Nynaeve continued. It is generally accepted to be irreversible. What makes a woman able to channel cannot be replaced once it is moved, any more than a hand that has been cut off can be healed back into existence. At least, no one had ever been able to heal stone. There had been attempts. What Naive said was generally true, yet some sisters of the brown Aja would study almost anything if given a chance. And some yellow sisters, the best healers, would try to learn to heal anything. But even a hint of success in healing a woman who had been stilled was non-existent. Aside from that one hard fact, little is known. Women who are stilled seldom live more than a few years. They seem to stop wanting to live. They give up. As I said, it is an unpleasant subject. The mirror shifted uncomfortably. She said in a low voice. Elaine thought it might be too. She resolved to ask Maureen if she ever saw her without having her there. It seemed to her that her deceit got in the way almost as much as it helped. Let us see if Joya still tells the same tale too. Even so, she had to take herself in hand before she could unravel the flows of air woven around the dark friend. Joy must have been stiff from standing so still for so long, but she turned smoothly to face them. The swift beat in her forehead did not diminish her dignity and presence, any more than her drab, rough dress lessened the sense of her being there by choice. She was a handsome woman, with something modern about her face, despite its ageless smoothness, something comforting. But the dark eyes set in that face made a flawlessly kind. She smiled at them, a smile that never reached those eyes. The light illumined you. May the hand of the Creator shelter you. I will not hinder and ignore. Nynaeve's voice was quiet and calm, but she tossed her braid over her shoulder and gripped the end in her fist, the way she did when angry or uneasy. Egwene did not think she was uneasy. Joy did not seem to make Nynaeve's skin crawl as she did Egwene's. I have repented my sins, Joy said smoothly. The dragon is reborn and he holds our Lord. The prophecies are fulfilled. The Dark One is come. I can see him now. My repentance is real. No one can walk so long in the shadow that she cannot come again. Nynaeve's face had grown darker by the word. Egwene was sure she was furious enough to channel now, but if she did, it would probably be to strangle Joya. Egwene did not believe Joya's repentance any more than Nynaeve, of course, but the woman's information might be real. Joya was quite capable of a bold decision to go over to what she believed would be the winning side, or she might only be buying time, lying in the hope of losing. Lies should not have been possible for an Aes Sedai, even one who had lost all hope to the name. Not outright lies. The very first of the three oaths, taken with the oath rod in hand, should have seen to that. But whatever oaths to the Dark One were sworn on joining the Black Aja, they seemed to sever all three oaths. Well, the Avalon had sent them out to hunt the Black Aja, to hunt Leandrin and the other 12 who had done murder and fled the tower. And all they had to go on now was what these two could or would tell them. Give us your tale again, Egwene commanded. Use different words this time. I am tired of listening to memorized stories. If she was lying, there was more chance she would trip herself up telling it differently. We will hear you out. That was for Nynaeve's benefit. She gave a loud sniff, then a curt nod. Joy shrugged. As you wish. Let me see. Different words. The false dragon, Master Time, who was captured in Salveia, can channel with incredible strength, perhaps as much as Randall Ford, or nearly so if the reports can be believed. Before he can be brought to Tarvalin and General, Leandrin needs to break him free. He will be proclaimed as the Dragon Reborn, his name given as Randall Ford, and then he will be sent to destruction on such a scale as the world has not seen since the War of the Hundred Years. That is impossible, Nynaeve broke in. The pattern will not accept a false dragon, not now that Rand has proclaimed himself. Egwene sighed. They had had this out before, but Nynaeve always argued. She was not sure Naomi really believed that Rand was the dragon reborn, no matter what she said, no matter the prophecies and Calendar and the fall of the stone. Nynaeve was just enough older than he to have looked after him when he was a child, just as she had after Egwene. He was an Emond's fielder, and Nynaeve still saw her first duty as protecting the people of Emond's Field. Is that what Moraine told you? Jorah asked with a touch of contempt. Moraine has spent little time in the tower since she was raised, and not much more with her sisters anywhere. I suppose she knows the workings of village life, perhaps even something of politics between nations, but she does claim certainty about matters learned only through study and discussion with those who know. Still, she might be correct. Not for any time might well find it impossible to claim himself, but if others do it for him, is there a difference that matters? Egwene wished Moraine would come back. The woman would not speak so confidently if Moraine were there. Jorah knew very well that she and Nynaeve were only accepted. It made a difference. Go on, Egwene said, almost as harshly as Nynaeve. And remember, different words. Of course, Jorah replied, as though responding to a gracious invitation, but her eyes glittered like chips of black eggs. You can see the obvious result. Randall Thor will be blamed for the degradations of Randall. Even proof that they are not the same man may well be dismissed. After all, who can say what tricks the dragon reborn can play? Perhaps put himself in two places at once. Even the sort who have always rallied to a false dragon will hesitate in the face of the indiscriminate slaughter and worse laid at his feet. Those who do not shrink at such butchery will seek out the Randall Thor who seeks to revel in blood. The nations will unite as they did in the ideal war.
No woman
She
up
gave
here
a
now.
kind of apologetic smile.
Would you
Almost
adapt?
beneath those merciless eyes, but no doubt not completely. Even the dragon reborn cannot stand against that, not forever. He will be crushed before the last battle even begins by the very ones he was meant to save. The Dark One will break free. The day of calm and guidance will come, and the shadow will cover the earth and remake the pattern for all time. That is Leandrin's breath. There was not a hint of satisfaction in her voice, but no horror either. It was a plausible story, more plausible than Rico's tale of a few eavesdropped sentences, but Egwene believed Rico and not Jorah, perhaps because she wanted to. A vague threat in Tanchico is easier to face than this big-fleshed plan to turn every hand against Rand. No, she thought. Jorah is wrong. I am sure she is. Yet they could not afford to ignore either story, but they could not chase after both, not with any hope of success. The door banged open, and
Right.
strode in, with Elaine following. The daughter air was from the floor in front of her toes, lost in dark trees. But Maureen, for once the eyes serenity had vanished. Fury painted her face. Chapter 6. Doorways. Rand out door, Moraine told the air in a low, tight voice, is a meal-headed, stone-willed fool of a man. Elaine lifted her chin angrily. Her childhood nurse, Lily, used to say you could weave silk from pig bristles before you could make a man anything but a man. But that was no excuse for them. We breathed them that way, the two rivers. Nynaeve was suddenly all half-suppressed smile and satisfaction. She seldom hid her dislike of the Aes Sedai half as well as she thought she did. Two rivers were never had any trouble with her. From the startled look Egwene gave her, that was a lie big enough to warrant having her mouth washed out. Moraine's brows drew down as if she were about to reply to Nynaeve in harder kind. Elaine stirred, but she could not find anything to say that would head off argument. Rand kept dancing through her head. He had no right. But what right did she have? Egwene spoke instead. What did he do, Moraine? The Aes Sedai's eyes swung to a blade, a stare so hard that the younger woman stepped back and snapped her fan open, But Maureen's gaze settled on Joya and Amiko, the one watching her wary, the other bound and unaware of anything but the far wall. Elaine gave a slow start at realizing Joya was not bound. Hastily she checked the shield, blocking the woman from the true source. She hoped none of the others had noticed her jump. Joya frightened her nearly to death, but Elaine and Naive were no more scared of the woman than Lorraine was. Sometimes it was difficult being as brave as the broader heir of Andor should be. She often found herself wishing she could manage as well as those two. The gods, Lorraine muttered as if to herself. I saw them in the corridor still, menacing. She smoothed her dress, composing herself with an obvious effort. Elaine did not believe she had ever seen Lorraine so out of herself as tonight. But then, the Aes Sedai paused. No more than I do. Will do. She found herself trying not to meet Blaine's eyes. Had it been Egwene or Nynaeve or Elaine who was off balance, Joya would surely have said so. Sutherland of true beauties calculated to upset them if they knew, if they had been alone at least. With Moraine she only watched uneasily, silently. Moraine walked the length of the table, her calm restored. Joya was nearly a head the taller, but had she also been dressed in silks, there would have been no doubt which was in command of the situation. Joya did not quite draw back, but her hands tightened on her skirts for a moment before she could master them. I have made arrangements, Lorraine said quietly. In 4 days you'll be taken under my ship to Tarvalin in the They are not so gentle as me. If you have not found the truth so far, find it. Stand tall, or you will assuredly go to the gallows in the trains. I will not speak to you again unless you send word to have something rude to tell. And I do not want to hear a word from you. Not a word, unless it is me. Believe me, it will save you pain in Tarvalin. Avienda, will you tell the captain to bring me to a prisoner? Elaine blinked as the Aiel woman unfolded herself and vanished through the doorway. Sometimes Avienda could be so still, she seemed not to be there. Joy's face worked as if she wanted to speak, but Lorraine stared up at her, and finally her dark friend turned her eyes away. They glittered like a radiance, full of deep murder. She heard her coming. To Elaine's eyes, a golden white glow suddenly surrounded Lorraine, the glow of a woman embracing a sunlight. Only another woman trained to channel could have seen. The foes holding Amiko unraveled more quickly than Elaine could have managed. She was stronger than Lorraine, potentially at least. In the tower, the women teaching her had been almost unbelieving at her potential, and of Egwene's and Nynaeve's. Nynaeve was the strongest of them all, when she could manage the channel. But Moraine had the experience. What they were still learning to do, Moraine could do fast. Yet there were some things Elaine could do, and the other two, that the Aes Sedai could not. It was a small satisfaction in the face of how easily Moraine cowed Joy. Freed, able to hear, Amiko turned and became aware of Moraine for the first time. With a squeak, she dropped a curtsy as deep as any rude novice. Joya was glaring at the door, avoiding the woman's gaze. Nynaeve, arms crossed and knuckles white from gripping her blade, was giving Moraine a stare almost as nervous as Joya's. Egwene faded her skirt and glowered at Joya. Elaine frowned, wishing she were as brave as a flame, wishing she did not feel
let's
she was
do
betraying
that.
her friend. Into that walked the captain with two more defenders in black and gold on his heels. Avienda was not with them. It seemed she had taken her opportunity to escape Aes Sedai. The grizzled officer, two short white plumes on his rimmed helmet, shied as his eyes met Joya's, though she did not even seem to see him. His gaze skittered from woman to woman uncertainly. The mood of the room was trouble, and a wise man would not want any talk of trouble among this sort of woman. The two soldiers clutched their tall spears to their sides, almost as if they feared they might have to defend themselves. Perhaps they did fear it. You will take these two back to their cells, Moraine told the officer curtly. Repeat your instructions. I want no mistakes. Yes. The captain's throat seemed to seize, dumped a breath. Yes, he said, watching her anxiously to see if that would do. When she only continued to look at him, waiting, he gave an audible sigh of relief. The prisoners are to talk to no one except myself. Children, 20 men in the guardroom and 2 outside each cell at all times. 4 if a cell door has to be opened for any reason. I myself will watch their food prepared and take it. All as you have commanded.
And
A hint of question tinged his voice. 100 rumors floated through the stone concerning the prisoners, and why 2 women needed to be guarded so heavily. And there were whispered stories about the Aes Sedai, each darker than the last. Very good, Moraine said. Take them. It was not clear who was more eager to leave the room, the prisoners or the guards. Even Joya stepped quickly, as if she could not bear keeping silent near Moraine for another moment. Elaine was certain she had kept her face calm since entering the room, but Elaine came to her, put an arm around her. What is the matter, Elaine? You look about to cry. The concern in her voice like bursting into tears. Right. I will not do that. I will not. A weeping woman is a bucket with no bottom. You had to change like that. 3 times, burst out of Moraine. 3, you have consented to help us question it. This time you vanished before we begin, and now you calmly announce you are sending them off to Tarvalon. If you will not help, at least do not interfere. Don't presume on the islands of flying too far, Moraine said coolly. She may have sent you to chase the uncle. You are still only accepted and woefully ignorant whatever letters you carry. Or did you need to keep questioning them there before reaching a decision? Rivers people seem to work avoiding decisions that was doing. Nynaeve opened and closed her mouth, eyes bulging, as if wondering which accusation to answer first. But Moraine turned to Egwene and vanished. Pull yourself together, Elaine. How you can carry out the island's orders if you think every man has the customs you were born to, I do not know. And I do not know why you are so upset. Do not let your feelings hurt others. What do you mean? Egwene said. What customs? What are you talking about? Marines in the chambers, Elaine said in a small voice before she could stop herself. Her eyes flickered guiltily toward Egwene. Surely she had kept her own feelings hidden. Moraine gave her a reproachful look and sighed. I would have spared you this if I could, Egwene. If Elaine had not let her discuss with Vernon over common sense. The customs of Mayenne are not those either of you were born to. Egwene, I know what you feel for Ren, but you must realize by now that nothing can come of him. He belongs to the captain and to history. Seemingly ignoring the Aes Sedai, Egwene peered into Elaine's eyes. Elaine wanted to look away and could not. Suddenly, Egwene leaned closer, whispering behind a cupped hand. I love you. And you like a sister. At least you want to. Elaine's eyes widened, spreading slowly across her face. She answered Egwene's hug with a fierce hug of her own. She murmured softly, I love you too, sister. Oh, thank you. She got it wrong, Egwene said half to herself, a delighted grin gleaming on her face. Have you ever been in love, Moraine? What a startling question. Elaine could not imagine the Aes Sedai in love. Moraine was blue Argent, and it was said blue sisters gave all their passions to horses. The slender woman was not at all taken aback. For a long moment she looked levelly at the pair of them, each with an arm around the other. Finally she said, I could wager I know the face of the man I will marry better than even blue knows that of your future husband. Egwene gaped in surprise. Who? Elaine gasped. The Aes Sedai appeared regretful at having spoken. Perhaps I only meant her sharing ignorance. Do not read too much into a few words. She looked at Nynaeve consideringly. Should I ever choose a man, should enticing. It will not be loud. That much I would say. That was a soft Nynaeve, but Nynaeve did not seem to like hearing it. Nynaeve had what Lenny would have called a hard patch to hold, loving not just a warder, but a man who tried to deny returning her love. Fool man that he was, he talked of the war against the shadow he could not stop fighting and could never win, of refusing to dress Nynaeve in widow's clothes for her wedding feast. Silly things, that's all. Elaine did not see how Nynaeve put up with it. She was not a very patient woman. If you are finished chatting about men, Nynaeve said absently, as though to prove just that, perhaps we can go back to what is important. Gripping her braid hard, she picked up speed and force as she went along like a water wheel, but the gears disengaged. How are we to decide whether Jorah is lying or Aniko through sending away, or whether they both are, or neither? I don't relish dithering here, Moiraine, no matter what you think, but I have walked into too many traps to want to walk into another, and I don't want to run after Jack of the
That was pretty much my last dad besides
these are the ones the Amelins sent
these.
after Leandrin and her cronies. Since you don't seem to think they are important enough to spare more than you to help us, the least you can do is not crack our ankles with a broom. She seemed about to whip that rage free and try to strangle the Aes Sedai with it, and Moiraine wore a dangerously cool, quizzical tone that suggested she might be ready to teach again the lesson on holding her tongue she had taught Jorah. It was, Elaine decided, time for her to stop moving. She did not know how she had fallen into the role of peacemaker among these men. Sometimes she wanted to take them all by the scruff of the neck and shake them, but her mother always said no good decision was ever made in anger. You might add to your list of what you want to do, she said. Why were we summoned to Rand? That is where Karim took us. He is all right now, of course. Moiraine killed him. She could not repress a shudder, thinking of her brief glimpse inside his chamber, but the diversion worked the charm. Killed? Nynaeve gasped. What happened to him? He almost died, the Aes Sedai said, as calmly as if she were saying he had a pocket temper. Elaine felt Elaine tremble as they listened to Moraine's dispassionate report, but perhaps he was trembling in his own. Bubbles of evil drifting through the pattern, reflections leaping out of mirrors, round and massive blood and wounds. Almost as an afterthought, Moiraine added that she was sure Carrigan and Grant had experienced something the same, but escaped unharmed. The woman must have ice inside her blood. No, she was heated enough about the man's stubbornness, and she wasn't cold not but now she felt the a bolt of silk these will keep on, Elaine said when Moiraine. Is there nothing you can do to stop it? Or the Grand can do? A small blue stone dangling from Moiraine's hair swung as she shook her head. Not until he learns to control his abilities. Perhaps not then. I do not know if even he will be strong enough to push the miasma away from himself. At the least, though, he will be better able to defend himself. Can't you do something to help him? Nynaeve demanded. You are the one of us who is supposed to know everything, or pretends to. Can't you teach him? Some part of it, anyway? And don't quote proverbs about birds teaching fish to fly. You would know better, Moiraine replied. If you had taken the advantage of your studies, you should know better. You want to know how to use the power, Nynaeve, but you do not care to learn how to perform. The wind is not sunshine. The clothes are different. And the is different. The birds are different. This time it rained after with the freezing tension. Moiraine stuck her out loud. Nynaeve only nodded, and she added, he can be stubborn as a stone sometimes. Nynaeve shut her mouth with a snap. They all knew how true that was. Moiraine eyed him, considering. At times, Elaine was not sure how much the Aes Sedai trusted them, or anything. He must
Still
leave,
dab
the
another
Aes
one.
Sedai said at last. Instead, he sits here, and the Tyrells already begin to lose their fear of him. He sits here, and the longer he sits doing nothing, the more the Forsaken will see his inaction as a sign of weakness. The more the door will be closed, what must do? He must act, or he will die. From a crossbow bolt in his back, or poisoning his food, or the Forsaken banding together to rip his soul from his body, he must act or die. Elaine winced at the danger on her wrist. Still only made it worse. And you know what we must do, don't you? Diane said tightly. You have this action planned. Lorraine nodded. Would you rather he go herring off alone months ago? I dare not risk it. This time he might be dead or worse before I find him. That was true enough. Ram hardly knew what he was doing, and Elaine was sure Moraine had no wish to lose the little guidance she still gave him, the little he allowed him to give. Can you share your plan for him with us? Elaine demanded. She was certainly not helping soothe the air now. Yes, do, Elaine said, surprising herself with a cool echo of Egwene's tone. Confrontation was not always something that could be avoided. Her mother always said it was better to guide people than try to hammer them into line. If their manner irritated one day, she gave them something. As long as you understand that you must keep it to yourselves. A plan revealed is a plan doomed to fail. Yes, she did understand.
Got clogged up a little bit.
Elaine certainly did. The plan
The only thing that sucks about these is once in a while they get clogged up.
Samael is in Ilium, the Aes went on. The Tyrants are always as ripe for war with Ilium as the Norns. They have been fighting each other off and on for 1,000 years, and they speak of their transport as Ottomans speak of Damascus. I don't know if Samael's presence would change that, not with the dragon reborn to lead them. Tyr will follow them easily enough in that enterprise, and if he brings Samael down, fight, Nynaeve exclaimed. You not only want him to start a war, you want him to seek out one of the Forsaken. No wonder he is being stubborn. He is not a fool for a man. You must face the Dark One alone, Moraine said calmly. Do you truly think we can avoid the Forsaken now? As for war, there are wars enough without them, and every one worse than useless. Any war is useless, Elaine began, then faltered as comprehension suddenly filled her. Sadness and regret had to show on her face, too, and certainly comprehension. Her mother had lectured her often on how a nation was led as well as how it was governed. Two very different things, but both necessary. And sometimes things had to be done for both that were worse, although the price of not doing them was worse still. Moraine gave her a sympathetic look. It is not always pleasant, is that? Your mother began when you were just old enough to understand, I suppose, teaching you what you will need to rule after her. Maureen had grown up in the royal family, not necessarily, but relatedly, no doubt overhearing the same. Yet sometimes humans would be better to be a farm woman knowing nothing beyond the boundaries of her fields. More riddles? Nynaeve said contemptuously. War used to be something I read about from Heathens, something far away that I didn't really understand. I know what it is now. Men killing men. Men behaving like animals, reduced to animals. Villages burned, farms and fields burned. Hunger, disease, and death, for the innocent as the guilty. What makes this way of yours better, Moraine? What makes it cleaner? Moraine said quietly. She shook her head. She did not want to be the one to explain this, but she was not sure even her mother, sitting on the lion throne, would have kept silent under Moraine's compelling dark-eyed stare. War will come with the end of life, she said reluctantly. Egwene stepped back a pace, staring at her in disbelief no sharper than that on Nynaeve's face. The incredulity faded from both whenever she continued. The Forsaken will not stand idle, Egwene. Samael cannot be the only one to seize the nation's reins, just the lone one we know. They will come after Ram eventually, in their own persons perhaps, but will convince themselves the fall of the stone is a lie, that man only with a false dragon has become bound. A false dragon perhaps strong enough to bind them if they do not move against their fears. One way or another, war will come. She cut off sharply. There was more to it, but she could not, would not, tell them that. Moiraine was not so reticent. Very good, she said, nodding. The others irrepressible. The look she gave Elaine said she knew Elaine had left out what she had on purpose. Hands folded calmly at her waist, she addressed Nynaeve at the end. Nothing makes this war better or taker, except that it will cement the tyrants to him, and the Illianers will end up following him just as the tyrants do now. How could they not, once the dragon banner flies over Ilion? Just the news of his victory might decide for wars in Talabot and Arach-Oran in his kingdom. There are wars ended for him. In one stroke, he will make himself so strong in terms of men and swords that only a coalition of every remaining nation from here to the right can defeat him. And with the same blow, he shows the Forsaken that he is not a hunter generally for the naked. That will make him wary and buy him time to learn to use his strength. He must move first, be the hammer, not the leader. The Aes Sedai grimaced slightly, a hint of her earlier anger ruffling her calm. He must move first. And what does he do? He reads himself into deeper trouble. Nynaeve looked shaken, as if she could see all the battles and death. Egwene's dark eyes were large with horrified understanding. Their faces made Elaine shake. One had watched Rand grow up, the other had grown up with him. And now they saw him starting wars, not the dragon they warned, but Rand out of war. Egwene struggled visibly, latching onto the smallest part, the most inconsequential of what Moiraine had said. How can reading put him in trouble? He has decided to find out for himself what the prophecies of the dragon say. Moraine's face remained cool and smooth, but suddenly she sounded almost as tired as Elaine felt. I had been prescribed in Tyr, but the chief librarian had 9 different translations in a lot. Rand has them all now. I pointed out the verse that applies here, and he quoted it to me from an old Canterbury translation. The power of the shadow made human flesh, awakened to turmoil, strife, and ruin. The hoary one, mocked and bleeding, dances the sword and brings out the mist, chains the shadow sworn to his will. From the city, lost and forsaken, leads the spears to war once more, breaks the spears and makes them see truth long hidden in the ancient tomb. She grimaced. It applies to this as well as it does to anything. Ilion under Samael is surely a forsaken city. Lead the tyrant's fears to war, chain Samael, and he has fulfilled the verse, the ancient dream of the dragon war. But he will not see it. He even has a copy in the old tome as if it understood 2 words. He runs after shadows, and Samael will rob him, or Lanfear may have him by the throat before I can convince him of his mistake. He's desperate. Nynaeve's gentle tone was not for Moiraine, Elaine was sure, but for Rand. Desperate and trying to find his way. So am I desperate, Moiraine said firmly. I have dedicated my life to finding him, and I will not let him fail if I can prevent it. I'm almost desperate enough to... She broke off, pursing her lips. Let it be enough that I will do what I must. But it isn't enough, Egwene said sharply. What is it you'll do? You have other matters to concern you, the Aes Sedai said. The Black Ajah... No! Elaine's voice was knife-edged and commanding. Her knuckles a hard white where she gripped her soft blue skirts. You keep too many secrets, Moiraine. But tell us this. What do you mean to do to him? An image flashed in her mind of seizing Moiraine and shaking the truth out of her if need be. Do to him? Nothing. I will very well. There is no reason you should not. You have seen what the tyrants call the Great Holding. Partly for a people that feared the power so, The Tyrants held in the stone a collection of objects connected to the power, second only to that in the final temple. Elaine, for one, thought it was because they had been forced to guard Kalendor so long, whether they wanted or not. Even the sword that is not a sword might seem less than what it was when it was one among many. But the Tyrants had never been able to make themselves display their prizes. The great building was kept in a filthy series of crowded rooms buried even deeper than the dungeons. When Elaine had first seen them, the locks on the doors had long since rusted shut, where the doors had not simply collapsed from dry rot.
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. And then we'll start round one.
To see if Leandrin and her friends took anything. I don't think they did. Everything was buried in dust and mold. It will take 10 riverboats to transport all of it to the tower. Perhaps they could make some sense of it there. I surely could not. The temptation to prod Moraine was apparently too great to avoid, for she added, "You would know all this if you were given some more of your time." Moraine took no notice. She seemed to be looking upward, examining her own thoughts, and she spoke almost to herself. "There is one particular Turan Rial in the whole room, a thing like a red stone mortar, subtly twisted to the eye. If I cannot make him reach some decision, I may have to step through." The small blue stone on her forehead trembled, sparkling. Apparently she was not able to take that step. At the mention of Turan Rial, Egwene instinctively touched the bodice of her dress. She discerned a small pocket there herself to hide the stone ring it now held. That ring was a Turan Rial, powerful in its way, if small, and Elaine was one of only 3 women who knew she had it, while Amy is not one of the 3. They were strange things, Terangrial, fragments of the age of legends like Ungrial and Sangrial, if more numerous. Terangrial used the one power instead of magnifying it. Each had apparently been made to do one thing and one thing alone, but though some were used now, no one was sure if those uses were anything like what they had been made for. The oath rod on which a woman took the 3 oaths on being raised Aes Sedai was a Terangrial that made those oaths a part of her flesh and bones. The last test a novice took on being raised to accept it was inside another Terangrial that ferreted out her most heartfelt fears and made them seem real, or perhaps took her to a place where they were real. Odd things would happen with Terangrial. Aes Sedai had been burned out or killed, or had simply vanished in studying them, and in using them. "I saw that go away," Elaine said, "in the last room at the end of the hall. My lamp went out and I fell 3 times before I made it to the door." A slight flush of embarrassment reddened her cheeks. "I was afraid to channel her, even to relight the lamp. Much of it looks rubbish to me. I think the tyrants simply grabbed anything that anyone hinted might be connected to the power. But I thought if I channeled, I might accidentally empower something that wasn't rubbish. Who knows what it might do?" "And if you had stumbled in the dark and fallen through the twisted doorway," Moraine said wryly, "that needs no channeling, only to step through." "To what purpose?" Nynaeve asked. "To gain answers. 3 answers, each true, about the past, present, or future." Elaine's first thought was for the children's tale, Beauty Under the Hill, but only because of the 3 answers. A second thought came on its heels, not her alone. She spoke while Nynaeve and Egwene were still opening their mouths. "Moraine, this solves our problem. We can ask whether Joya or Aniko is telling the truth. We can ask where Leandrin and the others are. The names of the Black Aja still in the tower. We can ask what this thing is that is dangerous to Revan," Egwene put in. And Nynaeve added, "Why haven't you told us of this before? Why have you let us go on listening to the same tales day after day, when we could have settled it all by now?" The Aes Sedai winced and threw up her hands. "You 3 rush in blindly, where Lan and the Hunter Warriors would tread warily. Why do you think I have not stepped through? Days ago I could have asked what Lan must do to survive and triumph, how he can defeat the Forsaken and the Dark One. How he can learn to control the power and hold off madness long enough to do what he must. She waited, hands on hips, while it said, "None of them speak." "There are rules," she went on, "and dangers. No one may step through more than once. Only once. You may ask 3 questions, but you must ask all 3 and hear the answers before you may leave. Frivolous questions are punished, it seems, but it also seems what may be serious for one can be frivolous coming from another. Most importantly, questions touching the shadow have dire consequences. If you asked about the Black Hydra, you might be returned dead, or come out a gibbering madwoman, if you came out at all. As for when, I am not certain it is possible to ask a question about the dragon reborn that does not touch the shadow in some way. You see, sometimes there are reasons for caution. How do you know all this? Nynaeve demanded. Planting fists on hips, she confronted the Aes Sedai. The High Lords surely never let Aes Sedai study anything in the world. From the filth down there, none of it has seen sunlight in 100 years or more. More than nothing, Moraine told her calmly. They ceased their collecting nearly 300 years gone. It was just before they stopped completely that they acquired this Turon realm. Up until then, it was the possession of the firsts of Mayenne, who used its answers to help keep Mayenne out of Tyr's grasp, and they allowed Aes Sedai to study it, in secret, of course. Mayenne has never dared anger Tyr too openly. If it was so important to Mayenne, Nynaeve said suspiciously, why is it here, in the stone? Because firsts have made bad decisions as well as good in trying to keep Mayenne free of Tyr. 300 years ago, the High Lords were planning to build a fleet to follow Mayenne's ships and find the oilfish shoals. Halvard, then first, raised the price of minor lamp oil well above that of oil from Tyr's olives, and to further convince the High Lords that Mayenne would always put its own interests behind those of Tyr, made them a gift of the Turon Beyond. He had already used it, so it was no further good to him, and he was almost as young as Barrowling is now, apparently with a long reign ahead of him and many years of leading tiring goodwill. He was a fool, Elaine muttered. My mother would never make such a mistake. Perhaps not, Moraine said. But then Andor is not a small nation cornered by a much larger and stronger. Halvar was a fool, as it turned out. The High Lords had him assassinated with Eric's sneer. But his foolishness does present me with an opportunity, if I need it. A dangerous one, if better than none. Nynaeve muttered to herself, perhaps disappointed that the Aes Sedai had not tripped herself up. Leaves the rest of us right where we were, Egwene sighed, not knowing who is lying or whether they both are. Question you again if you wish, Moraine said. You have until they are put on the ship, though I very much doubt either will change her tale now. My advice is to concentrate on Tanchica. If Joya speaks truly, it will take Aes Sedai and Wilderness to guard Muslim time, with just 3 of you. I sent a warning to the Amulet by pigeon when I first heard Joya's story. In fact, I sent 3 pigeons to make sure one reaches the tower. So kind of you to keep us informed, Elaine murmured coolly. The woman did go her own way. Just because they were only pretending to be full Aes Sedai was no reason for Moraine to keep them in the dark. The Amulet had sent them out to hunt the Black Hydra. Moraine inclined her head briefly as if accepting the thanks already. You are welcome. Remember that you are the hounds the Amulet sent after the Black Hydra. Her slight smile at Elaine's start said she knew exactly what Elaine had been thinking. The decision on where to course must be yours. You have pointed that out to me as well, she added dryly. I trust it will prove an easier decision than mine, and I trust you will sleep well, what sleep is not before daybreak. A good night. That woman, Elaine muttered when the door had closed behind the Aes Sedai. Sometimes I could almost strangle her. She dropped into one of the chairs at the table and sat frowning her hands in her lap. Nynaeve gave a grunt that might have been glee as she went to a narrow table against the wall where silver goblets and spice jars stood next to two pitchers. One pitcher, full of wine, rested in a gleaming bowl of now mostly melted ice, brought all the way from the spine of the world, packed in chests of sawdust. Ice in the summer could chill a hard-boiled extremely. Elaine could barely imagine such a thing. A cool drink before bed will do us all good, Naomi said, busying herself with wine and water and spices. Elaine lifted her head as Egwene took a seat next to her. Did you mean what you said, about them? Egwene nodded, and Elaine sighed. Do you remember what Lily used to say, all the jokes about shit? I sometimes wonder if that was a dream she did not tell us about. I thought she meant we both loved him and she would. But you had the right to, and I didn't know what to do. I still don't. Egwene, he loves you. You will just have to be put straight, Egwene said firmly. When I marry, it will be because I want to, not just because a man expects me to love him. I will be gentle with him, Elaine, but before I am done, he will know he is free, whether he wants to or not. My mother says men are different from us. She says we want to be in love, but only with the one we want. A man needs to be in love, but he will love the first woman to tie a string to his heart. That is all very well, Elaine said in a tight voice. But Berlin was in his chambers. Elaine sniffed. Whatever she intends, Berlin will keep running on one man long enough to make him love her. 2 days ago she was casting eyes at war. In 2 more she'll be smiling at someone else. She's like Elsa Grenwell. You remember her? The novice who spent all her time out at the practice yards fluttering her eyelashes at the warriors. She was not just fluttering her eyelashes in his bedchamber at this hour. She was wearing even less than usual, if that is possible. Do you mean to let her have him then? No, Elaine said very fiercely, and she meant it. But in the next breath she was full of despair. Oh, I do not know what to do. Let him. I want to marry him. What? What will mother say? I would rather spend the night in Joyous cell than listen to the lectures mother will give me. Andoran nobles, even in royal families, married commoners often enough that it hardly occasioned comment in Andor. But Rand was not exactly the usual commoner. Her mother was quite capable of actually sending Lily to drag her home by her hair. Poor Gaze can hardly say much if Matt is to be believed, Egwene said comfortably. Or even half believed. This Lord Gabriel your mother is moving after hardly sounds the choice of a woman thinking with her head. I'm sure Matt accepts it, Elaine replied. Her mother was too shrewd to make herself a fool already, and if Lord Gabriel, she'd never even heard of him before Matt's not his name, if this fellow dreamed he could gain power 2 more days, she would give him a rude awakening. Nynaeve brought 3 goblets of spiced wine to the table, beads of condensation running down their shining sides, and a small green and gold woven straw mats to put them on, so the damp would not mar the table's polish. So, she said, taking a
Number
chair,
one.
you've discovered you are in love with Grandoline, and Egwene has discovered she isn't. The two younger men gazed at her, one dark, the other fair, yet a near mirror image of astonishment. I have eyes, Nynaeve said complacently, and ears when you don't take the trouble to whisper. She sipped at her wine, and her voice grew cold before she continued. What do you mean to do about it? If that chit Fairlane has her claws into him, it will not be easy to pry him loose. Are you sure you want to go to the effort? You know what it is. You know what lies ahead of him, even setting the prophecies aside. Madness, death. How long does he have? A year? 2? Or will it begin before summer's end? He is a man who can challenge. She bit off each word in tones of iron. Remember what you were taught. Remember what he is. Elaine held her head high and let Nynaeve stare for stare. It does not matter. Perhaps it should, but it doesn't. Perhaps I am being foolish. I do not care. I cannot change my heart to order Nynaeve. Suddenly Nynaeve smiled. You have to be sure, she said warmly. You must be sure. It isn't easy loving any man, but loving this man will be harder yet. Her smile faded as she went on. My first question still has to be answered. What do you mean to do about it? Verlaine may look soft. She certainly makes men see her so. But I do not think she is. She will fight for what she wants. And she's the kind to hold hard to something she doesn't particularly want, just because someone else does want it. I would like to stuff her in a barrel, Egwene said, gripping her goblet as if it were a first stroke, and ship her back to Maine in the bottom of the hold. Nynaeve's braids swung as she shook her head. Oh, very well, but try to offer advice that helps. If you cannot, keep silent and let her decide what she must do. Egwene stared at her, and she added, Rand is Elaine's to deal with now, not yours. You have stepped aside, remember? The remark should have made Elaine smile, but it didn't. This was supposed to be different, she sighed. I thought I would meet a man, learn to know him over months or years, and slowly I would come to realize I loved him. That is the way I always thought it would be. I've been anyway. I've talked with him no more than half a dozen times in the space of a year, but I knew I loved him 5 minutes after I first set eyes on him. Now that was foolish. Only it was true, and she did not care if it was foolish. She would tell her mother the same to her face, and Lenny. Well, perhaps not Lenny. Lenny had drastic ways of dealing with foolishness, and she seemed to think Elaine had not aged beyond 10. As matters stand, I don't even have the right to be angry with him, or Elaine, but she was. I would like to see his face like his ears even for a year. I'd like to switch her all for day to the ship that takes her back to Maine. Only she did not have the right, and that made it all the worse. Infuriatingly, a plaintive tone touched her voice. What can I do? He has never looked at me twice. In the Two Rivers, Egwene said slowly, if a woman wants a man to know she is interested in him, she puts flowers in his hair at bell time or Sunday, or she might embroider a feast day shirt for him any time, or make a point of asking him to dance if no one else. Elaine gave her an incredulous look, and she hastened to add, I'm not suggesting you embroider a shirt, but there are ways to let him know how you feel. My ears believe in speaking out. Elaine's voice heightened her pitch. Perhaps that is the best way. Just tell him right out. At least he'll know how I feel then. At least I'll have some right to. She snatched her spiced wine and tilted her head back quickly. Sweetheart, except Maina hussy. Setting the empty goblet back on the small mat, she drew a deep breath and murmured, Well, I guess what's more important, Bernie said gently, is what you will do when we have to leave you. Whether it's Panchito or the Apollo or someone
Wait
else.
1 second, I'll be right back.
What will you do when you've just told him you love him and must leave him behind? If he asks you to stay with him, if you want to, I will go. There was no hesitation in Elaine's reply, but it took some strength. The other woman should not have had to ask. If I must accept him being the dragon reborn, he must accept that I am what I am, that I have duties. I want to be Aes Sedai, Nynaeve. It isn't some idle amusement. Neither is the work you three want to do. But you really think I would abandon you and Egwene? Egwene hurried to assure her that the thought had never crossed her mind. Nynaeve did the same, but slowly enough to give herself the moment. Elaine looked from one to the other of them. In truth, I feared you might tell me I was foolish, fretting over a thing like this when we have the black odds out to worry about. A slight flicker of Egwene's eyes said the thought had occurred to her, but Nynaeve said, Abby is not the only one who might die next year or next month. We might too. Times are not what they were, and we cannot leave. If you sit and wish for what you want, you may not see it this side of the grave. It was a chilling sort of reassurance, but it made her hope. She was not being sad. If only the black Aja could be settled soon. She pressed her empty silver goblet to her forehead for the coins. What were they to take? Chapter 7. Playing with Fire. With the sun barely above the horizon the next morning, Wayne presented herself at the doors to Rand's chambers, followed by a foot dragon below. The daughter heir wore a long-sleeved dress of pale blue silk, cut in the tyrant fashion, and pulled low after some discussion. A necklace of sapphires like a deep morning sky, and another strand woven into her red gold curls, showed up the blue of her eyes. Despite the damp warmth, Wayne wore a plain, deep red scarf, as large as a shawl around her shoulders. Avienda had supplied the scarf and the sapphires too. Surprisingly, the Aiel woman had a tidy store of such things somehow. For all she had known they were there, Egwene gave a start when the Aiel guards glided to their feet with startling suddenness. Elaine let out a small gasp, but quickly eyed them with that regal band surrounded slow. It seemed to have no effect on these sun-dark men. The six were Shining Natal, stone dogs, and appeared relaxed for Aiel, meaning they seemed to be looking everywhere, seemed ready to move in any direction. Egwene drew herself up in imitation of Elaine. She didn't seem to do that, spoke the daughter heir, and announced, I We want to see how the Lord Dragon's wounds are. Her remark was plainly foolish, if they knew much about healing, but that likelihood was small. Few people did, and Aiel probably less than most. She had not intended to give any reason for doing that. It was enough that they thought her eyes severe. But when the Aiel appeared almost to spring out of the black marble floor, it suddenly seemed a good idea. Not that they were making any move to stop Elaine and her, of course, but these men were all so tall, so stone-faced, and they carried those short spears and horn bows as if using them would be as natural as breathing and as easy. With those light-colored eyes regarding her so intently, it was all too easy to remember stories of black-veiled Aiel without mercy or pity, of the Aiel War, and the men like these who had destroyed every army sent against them until the last, who had only turned back to the waste after fighting the allied nations to a standstill, during 3 blood-soaked days and nights before Tarvalin itself. She very nearly embraced sight of. Gaul, the stone dog's leader, nodded, looking down at Elaine and her with a touch of respect. He was a handsome man, with a rugged build, a little older than 90, with eyes as green and clear as polished gems, and long eyelashes so dark they seemed to outline his eyes like that. They may be troubling me. This morning. Gaul grinned, just a quick flash of white teeth, in understanding of a temper would needed. He has chased off a group of these high lords already, and threw one of them out himself. What was his name? Torian. Another even taller man replied. He had an arrow knock, the short curved bow held almost casually. His gray eyes rested on the two women for an instant, then went back to searching among the anteroom's tables. Torian, drawled Lee. I thought he would slide as far as those petty cardinals. He pointed a spear to the ring of stiff-standing defenders, but he came short by 3 pieces. I lost a good tyrant hanging, all hawks and gold thread to mend it. The taller man gave a brief intent smile. It only blinked at the image of Rand physically personified when he crossed the floor. He had never been violent, far from it. How much had changed? She had been too busy with Jorah and the Reaper, and he too busy with Moiraine or Lan or the High Lords to do more than speak in passing. A few words back home here and there about how the Beltane festival might have gone this year and what Sunday would be like. It had all been so brief. How much had it changed? We have to see him, Elaine said, a slight tremor in her voice. Gaul made a bow, rounding the point of one spear on the black cover. Of course, Miss. It was with some trepidation that Egwene entered Rand's chambers, and Elaine's face spoke volumes of the effort those things had. No evidence of last night's horror remained, unless it was the absence of windows. Lighter patches marked the wall panels where those hanging there had been taken away. Not that the room came anywhere near neatness. Books lay everywhere, on everything, some lying open as if abandoned in the middle of a page. The bed was still unmade. The crimson draperies were pulled open on all the windows, facing westward toward the river that was tears half-veined, and calendars sparkled like polished crystal on a huge gilded stand of surprising goldies. Egwene thought the stand the ugliest thing she had ever seen decorating a room, until she glimpsed the silver wolf savaging a golden stag on the mantel above the fireplace. Scant breezes off the river kept the room surprisingly cool compared to the rest of the scene. Ram sat in his shirt sleeves, sprawled in a chair with one leg over the arm and a leather-bound book propped against his knee. At the sound of their footsteps, he snapped the book shut and dropped it among the others on the scroll-worked carpet, bounding to his feet, ready to fight. The scowl on his face faded as he took in who they were. For the first time in the stone, Egwene looked for changes in him and found them. How many months before then since she had seen him last? Enough for his face to have grown harder, for the openness that had once been there to fade. He moved differently, too, a little like Lan, a little like the Aiel, with his height and his reddish hair, and eyes that seemed now blue, now gray as the light took them. He looked all too much like an Aiel man, too much comfort. But had he changed inside? I thought you were someone else, he mumbled, sharing out embarrassed glances between them. That was the man she knew, even to the flush that rose in his cheeks every time he looked at her or Elaine, neither woman. Some people want things I can't give, things I will not give. Suspicion grew on his face with shocking suddenness, and his tone hardened. What do you want? Did Moiraine send you? Are you supposed to convince me to do what she wants? Don't be a goose, Egwene said sharply before she thought. I do not want you to start a war. Elaine added in pleading tones, you came to help me if you can. That was one of their reasons, and the easiest to bring up, they had decided over breakfast. You know about her plans, but he began roughly, then made a sudden shift. Help me? How? That is what Moiraine says. Egwene sternly folded her arms beneath her breasts, holding the scarf tight, in the way Nynaeve used to address the village council when she meant to have her way, no matter how stubborn they were. It was too late to start the only thing was to know where she would be going. I told you not to be a fool, Randall Thorpe. You may have tyrants bound to your boots, but I remember when Nynaeve switched your bottom for letting Matt talk you into stealing a jar of apple bread. Elaine kept her face carefully composed. Too carefully. It was plain to Egwene that she wanted to laugh out loud. Rand did not notice, of course. Men never did. He grinned at Egwene, close to laughing himself. We had just turned 13. She found us asleep behind a father's stable. Our heads hurt so much we didn't even feel her switch. That was not at all the way Egwene looked. Not like when you see that bowl at her head. Remember, she dosed you with dogwood tea because you'd been moping about for a week, and as soon as you tasted it, you hit her with her best bowl. What did you squeal? When was that? 2 years ago, come this. We are not here to talk over old times, Egwene said, shifting the scarf irritably. It was thin wool, but still far too hot. Really, he did have the habit of remembering the most unfortunate things. He grinned as if he knew what she was thinking, and went on in a better humor. You are here to help me, with what? I don't suppose you know how to make the High Lord keep his word when I'm not staring over his shoulder, or how to stop unwanted dreams. Surely he's helpful. Eyes darting to Elaine and back to her, he made another abrupt shift. What about the old tongue? Did you learn any of that in the White Tower? Without waiting for an answer, he began reading through the volumes scattered across the hall. There were more on the chairs, among the tumbled bedclothes. I have a copy here, somewhere, of Rand. Egwene raised her voice. Rand! I cannot read the old tongue. She shot a look at Elaine, warning her not to admit to any such knowledge. They had not come to translate the prophecies of the dragon for him. The sapphires in the daughter heir's hair swayed as she nodded. We had other things to learn. He straightened from the books with a sigh. It was too much. For a moment he seemed on the point of saying more, but stared at his books. Wayne wondered how he managed to deal with the High Lords and all their arrogance if she and Elaine were putting so out of countenance. We came to help you with channeling, she told him. With the power. What Moraine claimed was supposed to be true. A woman could not teach a man to channel any more than she could teach him how to bear a child. Elaine was not so sure. She had felt something working from Saeed once, or rather, she had felt nothing, something blocking her own flows as surely as stone-dammed water. But she had learned as much outside the tower as within. Surely in her knowledge there was something she could teach him, some guidance she could offer. If we can, Elaine added. Suspicion flashed across his face again. It was unnerving how his mood changed so quickly.
I'll be right
I
back.
have more chance of reading the old tongue than you do. Are you sure this isn't Maureen's doing? Did she send you here? Thinks she can convince me by some roundabout way, does she? Some twisty-eyed Senile plot I'll not see the point of until I admired it? He grunted sourly and pulled a dark green coat from the floor behind one of the chairs, shrugging into it hastily. I agreed to meet some more of the High Lords this week. If I don't keep an eye on them, they just find ways to get around what I want. They'll learn sooner or later. I guarantee you that. Me, the Dragon Reborn. I will teach them. You will have to excuse me. Shit. He walked here? Well, perhaps he did if it came to that, but she remembered a boy with a lamb nestled inside his coat, proud as a rooster because he had driven off the wolf for trifle. He was a shepherd, king, and even if he had called to give himself airs, it was no good to him that he did. She was about to tell him as much, but before she could, Elaine spoke up fiercely. No one sent us. No one. We came because we care for you. Perhaps it will not work, but you can try. If you care enough to try, you can try too. Is it so unimportant to you that you cannot spare some hour for your life? He stopped buttoning up his coat, staring at the daughter hair so intently that for a moment Elaine thought he had forgotten she was there. With a shiver, he pulled his eyes away. Glancing at Wayne, he shifted his feet and frowned at the floor. I will try, he muttered. It'll do no good, but I will. What do you want me to do? Wayne drew a deep breath. She had not thought convincing him would be this easy. He had been like a boulder buried in mud when he decided to dig his heels in, which he did far too often. Look at me, she said, embracing the sundial. She let the power fill her as completely as it ever had, more completely, accepting every drop she could hold. It was as if light suffused every particle of her, as if the light itself dimmed every cranny. Life seemed to burst inside her like fireworks. She'd never before let this much in. It was a shock to realize she was not equivalent. Surely she could not bear this glorious. She wanted to revel in it, to dance and sing, to simply lie back and let it roll through her, over her. She made herself speak. What do you see? What do you feel? Look at me, man. He lifted his head slowly, still frowning. I see you. What am I supposed to see? Are you touching the source? Egwene Moraine has channeled around me 100 times, and I never saw anything except what she did. It doesn't work that way. Even I know that much. I am stronger than Moraine, she told him firmly. She would be whimpering on the floor, or insensible if she tried to hold as much as I hold now. It was true, though she had never before rated Kadai's Sadai's ability so closely. Power pulsing through her stronger than heart. With this much she could do things Moraine could not dream of doing. The wound in Rand's side that Moraine had never healed completely. She did not know healing. It was considerably more complex than anything she had ever done, but she had watched Nynaeve heal, and perhaps with this great pool of the power filling her, she could see see something of how that would be feel. Not to do, of course, only to see it. Carefully she spun out hair-fine flows of air and water and spirit, the powers used for healing. Felt it was already. One touch, and she would feel shivering, snatching back her breathing. Her stomach churned as if every meal she'd ever eaten wanted to come up. It seemed that all the darkness in the world rested there in Rand's sight. All the world's evil in a festering sewer unlikely covered with tender scar tissue. A thing like that would soak up healing flows like lots of water and dry sand. How could he bear the pain? Why was he not weeping? From first thought to action had taken only a moment. Shaken and desperately heightened, she went on without a pause. You are as strong as you must be. Feel, Brand. What do you feel? What do you feel? I don't feel anything, he muttered, shifting his feet. Goosebumps, and no wonder. It's not that I don't trust you, Gwen, but I cannot help being nervous when one is traveling around me. She did not bother explaining to him the difference between channeling and merely embracing the true source. There was so much he did not know, even compared to her own scant knowledge. He was a blind man trying to work a loom by touch, with no idea of colors or what the threads or even the loom looked like. With an effort she released Sidon, and it was an effort, part of her wanted cry at the loss. I am not touching the source now, Ben. She stepped closer and peered up at him. Do you still feel goosebumps? No, but that's just because you told me. He gave an abrupt shrug of his shoulders. You see, I started thinking about it, and I have them again. Egwene smiled triumphantly. She did not need to look around at Elaine to confirm what she'd already sensed, what they had agreed upon earlier for this point. You can sense an embrace in the source, Brand. Elaine is doing just that right now. He squinted at the gaunt figure. It doesn't matter what you see or don't see. You feel it. We have that much. Let's see what else we can find. Brand, embrace the source. Embrace Sidene. The words came out loosely. They had agreed on this too, she and Elaine. He was Rand, not a monster from the stories, and they had agreed on it. But still, asking a man
I'm just trying to get you
the wonder was that he had gotten
a
words
safe
out.
point real quick.
Do you see anything? She asked Elaine. Or feel anything? Rand still doled out glances between them, in between staring before him in silent emotion. Why was he so out of countenance? Studying him fixedly, the daughter air shook. He could just be standing there for all I can tell. Are you sure he is doing anything? He can be stubborn, but he isn't foolish. At least he isn't foolish most of the time. Well, stubborn or foolish or something else, I feel nothing at all. Egwene frowned at him. You said we would do as we asked, man. Are you? If you felt something, so should I. And I do not. She broke off with a stifled yell. Something had pierced her button. Rand's lips twitched, clearly fighting with pain. That, she told him crisply, was not nice. He tried to keep his face innocent, but the grin slipped. You said you wanted to feel something, and I just thought. This sudden roar made Egwene jump. Clapping a hand to his left foot, he followed in a clean circle. Blood and ashes, Egwene! There was no need to. He fell off into deeper, inaudible mutters. Egwene was just as glad she could understand. She took the opportunity to flap the scarf for a little air, and shared a small smile with him. The glow faded around the daughter air. They both came close together.
Almost to a safe spot.
That should show him. About 100 for one, Egwene estimated. Turning back to Rand, she put on her sternest. I would have expected something like that from Matt. I thought you at least had grown up. We came here to help you if we can. Try to cooperate. Do something with the power, something that isn't childish. Perhaps we'll be able to sense that. Hunched, he glared at them. Do something, he muttered. You had no fault. I'll live for. You want me to do something? Suddenly, she lifted into the air, and Elaine too. They stared at each other wide-eyed as they floated a pace above the park. There was nothing holding them, no floes Wayne could feel or see. Nothing. Her mouth tightened. He had no right to do this, no right at all, and it was time he learned it. The same sort of shield of spirit that cut Joya off from the source would stop him too. Aes Sedai used it on the rare men they found who could channel. She opened herself to Saidar, and her stomach sank. Saidar was there, she could feel its warmth and light, but between her and the true source stood something,
Think I'm
nothing,
getting
an
close.
absence, like a stone wall. She felt hollow inside until panic welled up to fill her. A man was channeling and she was caught in it. He was Rand, of course, but dangling there like a basket, helpless. All she could think of was a man channeling and continued on the same thing. She tried to shout at him, called him
1 second. I think I found it.
do something, Rand growled. A pair of small tables fixed her legs, wood creaking, and began to stumble about in a stiff parody of dance, guilt flaking off in the fall. You like this? Fire flared up in the fireplace, filling the hearth from side to side, burning on the stone bare of ashes. Or this? The tall stag and wolves above the fireplace began to soften and slim. Thin streaks of gold and silver flowed out from the mass, fining down to shining threads, snaking, weaving themselves into a narrow sheet of metallic cloth. The length of glittering fabric hung in the air as it grew, its far end still linked to the slowly melting statuette on the stone. Do something, Rand said. Do something. Do you have any idea what it is like to touch Saidin, to hold it? Do you? You feel the madness fleeting, seeping into me. Abruptly, the capering tables burst into flame like torches, dancing still. Books spun in the air, pages fluttering. The mattress on the bed erupted, showering feathers across the room like snow. Feathers falling into the burning tables filled the room with their sharp, sudden sting. For a moment, Rand stared wildly at the blazing tables. Then, whatever was holding Egwene and Elaine vanished, along with the shield. Their heels thumped onto the carpet in the same instant the flames went out as if sucked into the wood they had been consuming. The blaze in the fireplace went out as well, and the books fell to the floor in a worse jumble than before. The length of golden silver cloth dropped too, along with strands of rough melted metal, no longer liquid or even hot. Only 3 largish lumps, 2 silver and 1 gold, remained on the mantle, cold and unrecognizable. Egwene had staggered into Elaine as they landed. They clutched each other for support, but Egwene felt the other woman doing exactly what she was doing, embracing Saidar as quickly as she could. In moments, she had a shield ready to throw around Rand if he even appeared to be channeling, but he stood stunned, staring at the charred tables with feathers still drifting down around him, flapping his coat. He did not seem to be a danger now, but the woman was certainly a mess. She wove tiny floats of hair to pull all the floating feathers together, and those already on the carpet. As an afterthought, she added those on his cape. The rest of it he could have the Majira straighten, or see to himself. Rand flinched as the feathers floated past him to alight on the tattered ruins of the mattress. It did nothing for the smell, burned feathers and burned wood, but at least the room was lit, and the open windows and faint breezes were already lessening the stench. The Majira may not want to give you another, he said with a springing laugh. A mattress a day is probably more than she is willing to. He avoided looking at her over again. I'm sorry. I did not mean to. Sometimes it runs wild. Sometimes there's nothing there when I reach for it. And sometimes it does things I don't. I'm sorry. Perhaps you had better go. I seem to say that a lot. He blushed again and cleared his throat. I am not touching the source, but maybe you had best go. We are not done yet, the brain said gently. More gently than she felt, she wanted to box his ears. The idea of keeping up with her, shielding her, and her. But
Give me 1 second, I'll be right back.
Like what? She thought. And she did not want to find out. Not now. Not here. With so many exclaiming over their strength, everyone said she and Elaine would be among the strongest Aes Sedai. if not the strongest in 1,000 years or more. She had assumed they were the strongest one, near to it at least. She had just been weirdly disillusioned. Perhaps Naive could come close if she was angry. But Egwene knew she herself could never have done what he just did. Split her flows that many ways, worked that many things at once. Working two flows at once was far more than twice as hard as working one of the same magnitude, and working three much more than twice again working two. He had to have been weaving a dozen. He did not even look tired, yet exertion with the power to manage it. She very much feared he would hurt her in the land both ways. Kittens he might decide to dwell if he had but she would not, could not, just walk away. That would be the same as quitting, and she was not ready for that. She meant to do what she had come there for, all of it, and he was not going to chase her off, sure of it. Not him or anything else. Elaine's blue eyes were filled with determination, and the moment Egwene fell silent, she added in a much firmer voice, "And we will not go until we are. You said you would try. You must try." "I did say that, he murmured after a time. "At least we consider." Not looking at the blackened tables or the band of metallic cloth lying crumpled on the carpet, he led them, limping slightly, to high-backed chairs near the windows. They had to move books from the red silk cushions in order to see. Egwene's chair held volume 12 of the Treasures of the Stone of Tyr, a dusty, wood-bound book entitled Travels in the Aiel Waste with various observations on the savage inhabitants, and a thick, tattered leather volume called Dealings with the Territory of Maine, 500 to 750 of the New Hill. Elaine had a bigger stack to move, but Ran hurriedly took them from her along with those from his chair and put them all on the floor, where the pile promptly fell over. Egwene laid hers neatly beside him. "What do you want me to do now?" He sat on the edge of his seat, hands on his knees. "I promise I won't do anything but what you ask," he said. Egwene bit her tongue to keep from telling him that promise came quickly. Perhaps she had been a little vague in what she'd asked for, but that was her excuse. Still, that was something to be dealt with for the time. She realized she was thinking of him as just Rand again, but he looked as if he had just splashed blood on her vest, and was worried she would not believe it and act it. Yet she had not let go of Saidar, and neither had Egwene. There was no need to be foolish. "This time," she said, "we just want you to talk. How do you embrace this horse? Just tell us. Take it step by step, slowly." "More like wrestle than embrace," he grunted, step by step. "Well, first I imagine a flame, and then I push everything into it. Hate, fear, nervousness, everything. When they're all consumed, there's an emptiness, a void inside my head. I'm in the middle of it, but I'm a part of what I'm concentrating on, too." "That sounds familiar," Egwene said. "I've heard your father talk about a trick of concentration he uses to win the archery competitions, what he calls the flame of the blade." Nan blushed. Sadly, it seemed. She thought he must be missing home, and his father. Tan taught Hendry first, and Lan uses it too with the sword. Selena, someone I met once, called it the oneness. A good many people seem to know about it, whatever they call it. But I found out for myself that when I was inside the void, I could feel Saidin, like a light just beyond the corner of my eye in emptiness. There's nothing but me in that light. Emotion, even thought, is outside. I used to have to take it bit by bit, but it all comes at once now. Most of it does, anyway. Most of the time. "Emptiness," Elaine said with a shiver. "No emotion. That doesn't sound very much like what we do." "Yes, it does," Egwene insisted eagerly. "Ran, we just do it a little differently, that's all. I imagine myself to be a flower, a rosebud. Imagining that I am the rosebud. That is like your void, anyway. The rosebud's petals open out to the light of Saridar, and I let it fill me, all light and warmth and life and wonder. I surrender to it, and by surrendering I control it. That was the hardest part to learn, really, how to master Saridar by submitting, but it seems so natural now that I do not even think about it. That is the key to it, and sure, you must learn to surrender." He was shaking his head vigorously. That's nothing like what I do, he protested. Let it fill me? I have to reach out and take hold of something. Sometimes there's still nothing there when I do, nothing I can touch. But if I didn't reach for it, I could stand there forever and nothing will happen. It fills me all right once I take hold. But surrender to it. He raked his fingers through his hair. Elaine, if I surrender, even for a minute, Cyrene would consume me. It's like a river of molten metal, an ocean of fire, all the light of the sun gathered in one spot. I must fight it to make it do what I want, fight it to keep from being eaten up. He sighed. I know what you mean about life filling me, even with the taint turning my skin. Colors are sharper, smells clearer, everything is more real somehow. I don't want to let go once I've had it, even while it's trying to swallow me. But the rest, face the facts. The tower is right about this. Accept it for the truth because it is. She shook her head. I will accept it when it is proved to me. She did not sound as sure as she wanted to, not as sure as she had. What he told sounded like some twisted half-reflection of what she did, similarities only emphasizing differences. Yet there were similarities. She would not be wrong. Can you tell the flows apart? Air, water, spirit, earth, fire? Sometimes, he said slowly. Not usually. I just take what I need to do what I want, fumble for it mostly. It's very strange. Sometimes I need to do a thing and I do it, but only afterward do I know what it was I did or how. It's almost like remembering something I've forgotten. But I can remember how to do it again, most of the time. Yet you do remember how, she insisted. How did you set fire to those tables? She wanted to ask him how he had made them dance. She thought she saw a way with air and water, but she wanted to start with something simple, lighting a candle and putting it out where things a novice could do. Rand's face took on a pained expression. No, he sounded embarrassed. When I want fire for a lamp or a fireplace, I just make it. But I do not know how. I don't really need to think to do things with fire. That almost stood to reason. Of the five powers, fire and earth had been strongest in men in the age of legends, and air and water in women. Spirit had been shared equally. Egwene hardly
Round
had
two.
intended to use air or water once she had learned to do it in the first place, but the thought had not furthered their purpose. This time it was Elaine who pressed him. Do you know how you extinguished them? You seemed to think before they went out. That I do remember because I don't believe I've ever done it before. I took in the heat from the tables and spread it into the stone of the fireplace. The fireplace wouldn't even notice that much heat. Elaine gasped, unconsciously cradling her left arm for a moment, and Egwene winced in sympathy. She remembered when that arm had been a mass of blisters because the Dora air had done what Rand had just described, and with just the lamp in her room. Shiriam had threatened to let the blisters heal by themselves. She had not done it, but she had threatened. It was one of the warnings novices were given. Never draw heat in. A flame could be extinguished using air or water, but using fire to cool the heat would meant disaster with a flame of any size. It was not a matter of strength, so Shiriam had said. Heat once taken in could not be gotten rid of, not by the strongest one ever to come out at the right time. Women had actually burst into flame themselves that way. Women had burst into flame. Egwene drew a ragged breath. What's the matter? Rand asked. I think you just proved the difference to me, she sighed. Oh, does that mean you're ready to give up? No. She tried to make her voice softer. She was not angry with him. Exactly. She was not sure who she was angry with. Maybe my teachers were right, but there has to be a way. Some way. Only I cannot think of one right now. You tried, he said simply. I thank you for that. It is not your fault it did not work. Must be a way, Egwene muttered, and Elaine murmured, he will find it. We will. Of course you will, he said with a forced cheerfulness. But not today. He hesitated. I suppose you'll be going then. He sounded half regretful, half glad. I do need to tell the High Lords a few things about taxes this morning. They seem to think they can take as much from a farmer in a poor year as I could without beggaring him. And I suppose you'll never get back to questioning those dark things. He frowned. He had not said anything, but Elaine was sure he would like to keep them as far from the black object as possible. She was a little surprised he had probably tried to make them return to the town. Perhaps he knew that shooting Nynaeve would put a flea in his ear the size of a horse. We do, she said firmly, but not right away. Ren, the time had come to bring up her second reason for being there, but it was even more difficult than she had expected. This was going to hurt her. Those sad, weary eyes convinced her it would, but it had to be done. She snapped the scarf around her and enveloped her from shoulders to waist. Ran, I cannot marry you. I know, he said. She blinked. He was not taking it as hard as she expected. She thought so. Still, I do not mean to hurt you. Really, I don't. But I do not want to marry you. I understand. I know. No woman. You rude-brained idiot, she snapped. This had nothing to do with you, Sharon. I do not love you. At least, not in a way to want to marry you. Rand's jaw dropped. You don't love me. He sounded as surprised as he looked, and hers too. Please, try to understand, she said in a gentle voice. People change, Rand. Feelings change. When people are apart, sometimes they grow apart. I love you as I would a brother. As more than a brother, but not to marry. Can you understand? He managed a rueful grin. I really am too. I didn't really believe you might change too. Egwene, I do not want to marry you either. I did not want to change. I didn't try to if it happened. If you knew how much this means to me, not having to pretend, not being afraid I'll hurt you. I never wanted to do that. Never to hurt you. She very nearly smiled. He was putting on such a brave face. He was actually quite close to convincing. I'm glad you are taking it so well, she told him in a soft voice. I did not want to hurt you either, and now I really must go. Rising from her chair, she bent to press a kiss on her cheek. You'll find someone else. Of course, he said, getting to his feet, the lie loud in his voice. You will. She slipped out with a sense of satisfaction and hurried across the anteroom, letting Saidar go as she took the scarf from her shoulders. The thing was a button. He was ready for Elaine to pick up like a lost puppy if she handled him the way they had discussed. She thought Elaine would manage him nicely, now and later, for as much later as they had. Something had been done about his control. She was willing to admit that what she had been told was right. No one could teach him. Fish and birds. But that was not the same as giving up. Something had to be done, so a way had to be found. That horrible run and the madness were problems for later, but they would be dealt with eventually. Somehow. Everyone said Two Rivers men were stubborn, but they could not match Two Rivers men. Chapter 8. Hard Heads. Elaine was not certain Rand realized
Here's
he was
number
doing
2.
the way he stared after it in a half-bewildered expression. Now and again he shook his head as if arguing with himself, or trying to straighten his mind. She was content to leave him. Anything that put off the moment a while longer. She concentrated on maintaining an outward composure, back straight and head high, hands folded in her lap, a calmness on her face that could rival Maraine's best. Butterflies the size of hedgehogs frolicked in her stomach. It was not fear of him shattering. She had let go of Saidar as soon as Egwene stood to leave. She wanted to trust him, and she had to. It was what she wanted to happen that had her trembling inside. She had to concentrate not to finger her necklace or fiddle with the strand of sapphires in her hair. Was her perfume too heavy? No. Egwene said he liked the smell of roses, the dress. She wanted to tuck it up, but he turned, a slight length in his step tightened her lips thoughtfully. saw her sitting in her chair, gave a start, eyes wide with what seemed very close to her. She was glad to see it. The effort of keeping her own face serene had reached tenfold as soon as his eyes touched her. Those eyes were blue now, like a misty autumn sky. He recovered on the instant and made a quite unnecessary bow, wiping his hands once nervously on his coat. I did not realize you were still. Flushing, he cut off, forgetting her presence might be taken as an insult. I mean, I didn't. That is, He took a deep breath and began again. I am not as much of a fool as you sound like. It isn't every day someone tells you they don't love you. She put on a tone of mock civility. If you call me that again, I shall call you my Lord Grey and curtsy. Even the Queen of Angor might curtsy to you, and I'm only Robert Peter. I don't do that. He seemed uneasy out of all proportion to the threat. She said in a more serious voice, if you call me by my name, Elaine, see it. Elaine. He spoke awkwardly, yet delightfully, as if he were savoring the name too. Boy, it was absurd to be so pleased. All he had done was say her name after her. There was something she had to know before she could go on. Did it hurt you very much? That could be taken two ways, she realized. Would it rain hurt you? No. Yes. Some. I don't know. Fair is fair, after all. His small grin took some of the edge off of his wariness. You sound a fool again, don't you? I told her the pure truth. I don't think she believed it. I suppose I did not want to believe it of her. Not me. If that isn't foolish, I don't know what is. If you tell me all the time that you're not a fool, I may begin to believe it. You won't have to hold on to me. I won't have to deal with that. Her voice was calm, with a light enough tone to let him know she did not really mean what she said. I saw Kyrie Edwards old once, a man in a common striped coat, probing women on so many things. You look silly wearing bands. I suppose he said ruefully. I really remember that. His slow grin was wider this time, more of his whole face. The butterfly's wings flogged her for haste, but she occupied herself with straightening her skirts. She had to go slowly, carefully. He didn't. Your finger had just a foolish and he would be wrong. The butterflies in her belly were beating kettle drums now. Would you like a phone? He asked suddenly, and she blinked in confusion. A phone? Yes. Striding to the bed, he scooped up another handful of feathers from the tattered mattress and held them out to her. I made one for the Majira last night. You would have thought I'd bidden her to stay. But yours will be much prettier, he added hastily. Much prettier, I promise. I will be careful. It takes only just a thread, and I will be very careful. She had to trust him. It was a small surprise to realize that she did. I was For long moments he stared at the fluffy mound in his hands, a slow frown on his face. Abruptly he let the feathers fall, dusting his hands. He said, that's no fit gift for you. Her heart went out to him. Clearly he had tried to embrace Saidi and failed. Masking disappointment in action, he limped hurriedly to the metallic cloth and began gathering it uneasily. Now this is a proper gift for the daughter heir of Andor. We could have a seamstress make he floundered over what a seamstress might make from a 4-piece length of gold and silver cloth and placed them 2 feet. I am sure a seamstress will have many ideas, she told him. Pulling a handkerchief from her sleeve, she knelt for a moment to collect the feathers he had dropped into the square of the openings. The maids will take care of that, he said as she tucked the small bundle securely into the feather. It is time. How did he understand that she would keep the feathers because he was holding the glittering folds as if he did not know what to do. The Majira must have seamstresses, she told him. I will give that to her But then he brightened. She saw no reason to tell him she meant it. Those thundering butterflies would not let her hold back any longer. And do you like me? Of course I like it. I like it very much. You don't have to look as if you did not understand me. She was startled that she said it so calmly. Her stomach seemed to be trying to writhe up into her throat, and her hands and feet felt helpless. That was it. She was not going to make a fool of herself. He has to say nothing about that face. She almost giggled hysterically. I will not. I will not be like you and I will not. He said slowly. I am usually so firm. That might make you think of Barry. There was red in his cheeks. He was thinking of Barry. From her voice came as smooth as silk. Soon I will have to go. To leave too. I won't see you again for months. Forever, a tiny voice cried in her head. She refused to listen. I could not go without letting you know how I feel. And I am very fond of you. Elaine, I am fond of you. I feel I want the scarlet spots on his cheeks. Elaine, I don't know what to say. How to... Suddenly it was her face that exclaimed. He must think she was trying to force him to say more. Aren't you? The small voice mocked. It only made her cheeks flutter. Now, I'm not asking you to say it. I only wanted you to know how I feel. That is all. Verlaine would not have let it go at that. Verlaine would have been wrapped around him by now. Telling herself she would not let that half-dressed slip better her, she moved closer to him, took the glittering cloth from his arm, and held it on the floor. For some reason, he seemed taller than he ever had before. Rand, Rand, I want you to kiss him. There, it was out. Kiss him, he said, as if he had never heard of kissing before. Elaine, I need your promise. I mean, it isn't as if we were betrothed. Not that I'm suggesting you should. It's just that I am fond of you, more than fond. I just don't want you to think I am. She had to laugh with all his confused earnestness. I do not know how linked you have to members, but in Cayman we don't wait until you are betrothed before kissing them. And it does not mean you must become betrothed either. But perhaps you do not know how. His arms went around her almost roughly, and his lips came down on hers. Her head spun, her toes tried to curl up in her slippers. Sometime later, she was not certain how long, she realized she was leaning against his chest, knees trembling, trying to gulp. Forgive me for a minute, he said. She was glad to hear breathlessness in his voice. I am just a backward shepherd from the two others. She murmured against his shirt, and he did not change this morning. Elaine, I... She put her hand over his mouth. I do not want to hear anything from you that you do not know and want, she said firmly. Not now, or ever. He nodded, not as if he understood why, but at least as if he understood that she meant what she said. Straightening her hair, the strand of sapphires was tangled beyond mending without a mirror. She stepped out of his encircling arms, not without reluctance. It would be all too easy to remain there, and she had already been more forward than she had ever dreamed of before, speaking upright, asking for a kiss, asking. She was not Verlaine. Verlaine. Perhaps Lynn had a viewing. she would not share him with Barry. Perhaps she needed to do a bit more things. A week of play, at least. I expect you will no doubt come up with that one. Just remember that some beings see a man with their hearts, while others see no more than a father to them, different than a necklace or a bracelet. Remember that I will come back, and I will seize with you. He looked confused at first, then a little alarmed. She had said too much too fast. She had to prevent him. Do you know what you have not said to me? You have not tried to right my will by telling me how dangerous you are. Don't try now. It is too late. I did not think of that. Another thought came to him, though, and his eyes twinkled with suspicion. Would you and McWayne scheme this up between you? She managed to combine wide-eyed innocence with mild outrage. How could you even consider such a thing? Do you imagine we would hand you around between us like a package? You think a good deal of yourself. There is such a thing as being overwhelmed. He did look confused now, quite satisfactory. Are you sorry for what you did to us, Ren? I did not mean to frighten you, he said hesitantly. It Wayne made me think. She's always been able to without half trying. That's no excuse, you know. I said I was sorry, and I didn't it not? Burned tables and another mattress ruined. And for the beach? His face reddened again, but he faced her firmly even so. No, I am not sorry for that. The two of you talking over my head as if I were a lump of wood with no ears. You deserved as much, both of you, and I wasn't indifferent. For a moment she considered him. He rubbed his arms
Be right back.
against hastings as she momentarily embraced Sundown. She did not know Philip to any degree, but she had learned bits and pieces on the edge of it. Channeling, she soothed away the hurt she had given him for a week. His eyes widened in surprise, and he shifted on his feet as if testing the absence of pain. "For being honest," she told him simply. There was a rap at the door and Paul looked in. At first the Yeoman had his head down, but after a quick glance at them, he raised it. Color flooded Elaine's face as she realized he had suspected that he might be interrupting something he should not see. She very nearly embraced Sidar again and taught him a lesson. "The time, Gaul said. The High Lords you were expecting. I will go now," she told them. "You must tell them about the ancestors. Think on what I said." She did not say, "Think of me," but she was surely of that advice. He reached out as if to stop her, but she slipped away from him. She had been intentionally putting on a display. The man was Aïe, but almost quickly, wearing perfume and sapphires at that hour of the night. It required real effort not to pull the neckline of her dress up higher. The High Lords entered as she reached the door, a cluster of graying men in pointed beards and colorful ornate coats with fine sleeves. They crowded out of her way with reluctant bows, their bland faces and polite murmurs not hiding their relief that she was leaving. She glanced back once from the doorway. A tall, broad-shouldered young man in a trading green coat among the High Lords in their silks and satin stripes. Rand looked like a stork among them. Yet there was something about him, a presence that said he commanded the environment. The Tyrants recognized him, bending their stiff necks for nothing. He thought probably they bowed just because he was the dragon born, and perhaps they thought so too. But she had seen men like Gareth Bryn, the captain commander from Mother's Guards, who could have dominated a room in rags, with no title and no one had known him. Rand might not know it, but he was such a man. He had not been when she first saw him, but he was now. She pulled the door shut behind her. The Aiel around the entrance glanced at her, and the captain commanding the river defenders in the middle of the anteroom stared uneasily, but she barely noticed them. It was dark, or at least it was beginning. 4 days she had before Joya and Anita worked on that ship. 4 days at most to twine herself so firmly into Rand's thoughts that he had no vision of rebelling. Or if not that, friendly enough that she stayed inside his head until she had the chance to remember. She'd never thought she could do a thing like this, stalk a man like a huntress stalking a wild boar. The butterflies were still gambling to herself. At least she had not let him see how nervous she was, and it occurred to her that she had not once thought how her mother would see. With that, the flutterings vanished. She did not care what her mother said. Borghese had to accept her daughter as a woman. That was all there was to it. The Aiel bowed as she moved away, and she acknowledged them with a gracious nod that would have done Borghese harm. Even the tyrant captain looked at her as if he could see her use and everything. She did not think she would be troubled by butterflies again. For the black object, perhaps, but not for Rand.
Ignoring the High Lords and their anxious semicircle, Rand watched the door close behind him, with wonder in his eyes. Dreams coming true, but only this much made him uneasy. A swim in the water was one thing. He would never have believed a dream where she came to him like this. She had been so cool and collected, always tripping over his own tongue. And Egwene, giving his own thoughts back to him, and only concerned she might hurt him. Why was it women could go to pieces or fly into a rage at the smallest thing, yet never flicker an eyelash or let them gaping? Fine old dragon. Sinmon murmured, more diffidently than usual. Word of this morning must have spread through the stone already. The first lot had nearly run on their way out, and it was doubtful Torian would show his face or his filthy suggestions anywhere Rand was. Sinmon essayed an ingratiating smile, then smiled it, dry washing his plucked hands. Rand only looked at him. The rest pretended they did not see the burned tables or the shattered mattress, the scattered books, or the half-melted lumps over the fireplace that had been staggered wolves. High Lords were good at seeing only what they wanted to see. Carlion and Dedosia, both self-abasement in every line of their thick bodies, surely never realized there was anything suspicious, never looking at one another. But then, Rand might never have noticed, if not for Tom's note, not on the coat just back from the flash. The Lord Dragon wished to see us, Sinmon finished. Could Egwene and Lane have looked it up between them? Of course not. Women did not do things like that any more than men. They had no coincidence. Elaine heard that he was free and decided to speak. That was it. Taxes, Bart. The tyrants did not move, but they gave the impression that they were happy. How he hated dealing with these men. He wanted to dive back into the books. He's a bad one, the title of that with lowering taxes. A lean, gray-haired man said in a worthy voice. Mylon was tall for a tyrant, only a head shorter than Rand, hard as any defender. He held himself in a stoop in Rand's presence. His dark eyes showed how he hated it. But he had hated it when Rand told him to stop crouching around him, too. None of them straightened, but Mylon, especially, did not like being reminded of what he did. The peasants of always will easily lower taxes when the day comes that we raise them back to where they are now. The fools will complain as bitterly as if we had doubled the present levy. There may well be riots when that day comes, my Lord Dragon. Rand strode across the room to stand before Colin. The crystal sword glittered, outshining the gilt and gemstones that surrounded him. A reminder of who he was and the power he could wield. Anyway, it was foolish to feel hurt because she said she no longer loved him. Why should he expect her to have feelings for him that he did not have for her? Yet it did hurt. A relief, but not a pleasant one. You will have riots if you drive men off their farms. 3 books stood in a stack almost by Mylon's feet. The treasures of the Stone Tier, Travels in the Waste, and Dealings with the Territory of Man. The keys lay in those and in various translations of the Koreathon cycle. If he could only find them and fit them to the proper locks. He pushed his mind back to the High Lords. Do you think they will watch their families starve and do nothing? The defenders of the stone have put down riots before my Lord Dragon, Sinmon said simply. Our own guards can keep peace in the countryside. The peasants will not disturb you, I give you my assurance. There are too many farmers as it is. Carrion flinched and grinned splendid. It is the civil war in Kyrian, my Lord Dragon, he explained correctly. The Kyrianen can buy no grain, and the granaries are bursting. This year's harvest will go to waste as it is. And next year, very nice, so, my Lord Dragon. What we need is for some of those peasants to stop their eternal digging and planting. He seemed to realize he had said too much, or Bevin did not understand why. Rand wondered whether he had any idea how food got to his table. Did he see anything but gold and power? What will you do when Carrion is buying grain again? Rand said quickly. For that matter, is Carrion the only land that needs grain? What did she expect? Oh, she said. Women can play games with words like Aes Sedai. Did she mean she not do? Foolishness. Over pride will be great. My old friend, Mylon said, half subservient, half as if explaining something to a child. If the civil wars stopped today, Carrion still could not buy more than a few barge loads for 2, 3 years. We have always sold our equipment to God. Always. For the 20 years since the Ideal War, they were so bound up in what they had always done that they could not see what was so simple, or would not see it. When the cabbages sprouted like weeds around Demon's Field, it was a near certainty that bad rain or whiteworm had struck Devon Ride or Watch Hill. When Watch Hill had too many turnips, Evans Field would have a shortage or Devon Ride. Offer it to Leah, he told me. Didn't he? Well, Tara, he didn't like that. But he liked Min's much, or thought he did. It was impossible to sort out skills for either. You have ships for the sea as well as riverboats and barges, and if you don't have enough, hire them from Mayan. You like both of them. But beyond that, he had spent very nearly his whole life looking after his wife. He was not about to dive into that again until he was sure. Sure of something. Sure. If dealings with the territory of Mayan was to believe, stop this, he told himself. Keep your mind on these weasels. They'll find cracks to slip through. Bite you on the way. Pay with grain. I'm sure the first will be amenable for a good price. And maybe a signed agreement, a treaty. That's a good word. The sort they used. Pledging to leave Mayan alone in return for ships. He owed her that. We trade little with giving up, my Lord Dragon. You vultures and scum. Because he had sounded scandalous. So did Mylon when he said, we have always dealt with Mayan from strength, my Lord Dragon. Never bent me. Rand took a deep breath. The High Lord's tensed. It always came to this. He always tried to reason with them, he'd always failed. Tom said the High Lords had heads as hard as the stone. He was right. Thinking about it, she certainly pretty. He was not sure if he meant to write stop this. He squeezed the door and a kiss straight at her. Putting women firmly out of his head, he set himself to tell these stone-brained fools what they were going to do. First, you will cut taxes on farmers by 3/4, and on everyone else by half. Don't argue, just do it. Second, you go to Verley and ask her price for hiring. The High Lords listened with false smiles and grinding teeth. But they listened.
Elaine was considering Joya and Monica when Matt fell in beside her, just walking down the hallway as if he merely happened to go the same way. He was frowning to himself, and his hair needed brushing, as if he'd been scrubbing his fingers through it. Once or twice he glanced at her, but did not speak. The servants they passed bowed and curtsied, and saluted the occasional high lords and ladies, if with markedly less enthusiasm. Matt's lip-curling stares at the nobles would have brought trouble if she had not been there, friend of the Lord Dragon or not. This silence was not like him. Not like the man she knew. Except for his fine lab coat, wrinkled as if he had slept in it, he seemed no different than the old man. Yet they were surely all different now. His quiet was unsettling. Is last night troubling you? She asked at last. Where is the stuff? You know about that? Well, you would, wouldn't you? Doesn't bother me. Wasn't much to it. Over and done with now, anyway. She pretended to believe him. Naive and I do not see much of you. That was a blank understatement. I've been busy, he murmured with an uncomfortable shrug, looking everywhere but at her again. Dicey, she asked dismissively. Cards. A plump maid, curtsied with her arms full of folded towels, glanced at Egwene, and apparently thinking she was not looking, winked at her. He grinned at her. I've been busy playing cards. Egwene's eyebrows rose sharply. That woman had to be 10 years older than Naive. I see. It must use up a great deal of time, playing cards. Too much to spare a few moments for old friends. The last time I spared you a moment, you and Naive tied me up with the power like a pig for market, so you could rummage through my room. Friends don't steal from friends. He grimaced. Besides, you're always with that Elaine with her nose in the air, or Marlene. I do not like it. Clearing his throat, he shot her a sideways glance. I don't like taking up your time. You are busy, from what I hear, questioning dark friends, doing all sorts of important things, I should imagine. You know these tyrants think you are Aes Sedai, don't you? She shook her head ruefully. It was Aes Sedai he did not like. However much of the world Matt saw, nothing would ever change him. It is not stealing to take back what was supposed to be a loan, she told him. I don't remember you saying anything about a loan. What use do I have for a letter from the army? Just get me in trouble. You could have asked. She refrained from pointing out what they could have asked. She wanted neither an argument nor a sulky question. He would not call it that. This time she would let him get away with his version. Well, I'm glad you are still willing to talk to me. Was there a special reason for it today? He shoved his fingers through his hair and muttered to himself. What he needed was his mother to call him off by his ear for a long talking to. Egwene counseled herself to patience. She could be patient when she wanted to. She would not say a word before he did, if she burst for it. The corridor opened into a raised colonnade of white marble, looking down on one of the stone's few gardens. Large white blossoms covered a few small waxy-leafed trees, and gave a scent even sweeter than the banks of red and yellow roses. A sullen breeze failed to stir the hangings on the inner wall, but
Excuse
it
me.
did cut the morning's growing damp once. Matt took a seat on the wide balustrade with his back against the column and one foot up in front of him. Peering down into the garden, he finally said, I need some advice. He wanted advice from her. She goggled at him. Maybe I can do to help, she said faintly. He turned his head to her and seemed the best to assume something like Aes Sedai calm. What do you want advice about? I don't know. It was a 10-pace drop to the garden. Besides, there were men down there weeping among the roses. If she pushed him over, he might land on one. A guard took his usual. How am I supposed to advise you then? She asked in a thin voice. I'm trying to decide what to do. He looked embarrassed. He had a right to, in her opinion.
Alright, everyone, I'm gonna call into this live for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.